Hi, this is Dr. Cherie, and welcome to my podcast. I'm happy that you joined us, and I'm really glad that you have subscribed to it. It's great. I have a guest that you may remember from 3 times before. And the reason she's back for the 4th time is because she's, number one, so engaging, so interesting, so bright, so charming, and really adds another dimension of deep thought to the podcast. So you probably recognize that this is Shiri Ben-Arzi from Israel. She is the CEO of MCI Medical Coaching International, and she does a fantastic job of helping people become senior to their situations. Now, you see, one of the reasons I like having Shiri on my show is because we're all having to become senior to our situations right now. In this situation of this COVID-19, it could dominate us. It could be the force that tells us how we think, how we feel, how we react, what our moods. It could tell us just about everything. But the key thing for us to be able to deal, manage, cope, and thrive in this situation, it's not like anything we've ever seen before. And it's challenging and stretching us beyond what we know we can handle. I'm right now in southern Thailand, and we've just gone into lockdown today, April 10th, for the next 20 days. Shiri is in Israel, and she's just come out of lockdown for Passover. So I want you to be my friend and help me welcome, with a very warm welcome, Shiri Ben-Arzi. Hi.
Shalom.
Shalom. So our subject today, we've been talking about, it's hard enough to be in a lockdown situation in your country, in your city. It's hard enough to have the whole family crammed into quarters with whatever configuration of parents, children, extended family are all together in one place, which they rarely are, except possibly in the evenings and overnight. But now it's 24/7. But there's a group of people that you've brought to my attention very clearly that are people who, because they're in lockdown, because there is nowhere for them to go, they are seriously at risk because their home may not be perceived as safe at all to them.
Yeah, it's not.
So let's talk about some of those people who are unsafe when they have to shelter in place.
So what we're talking about is domestic violence. So these are women and children that are living with an abusive family member, most likely father or husband. And before Corona, let's say that there was an option to step out. Either the husband or the father would go to work. So there would be these hours of peace and quiet and a sense of safety. And there would be a possibility to go outside the house, mostly kids. They would have the option to go and play with friends, and they would have school. And now that option doesn't exist. So they're all cooped up together in this pressure cooker. And for someone that is prone to violence anyway, this is just an amazing catalyst. And, the rest of the family members are kind of convenient punching bags.
So in a pressure cooker situation, it seems as if there would be multiple triggers happening to be able to set off that pressure cooker.
Yeah. Because the level of stress is going to be very, very high. And we are talking about people that have violent habits. And basically, we're talking about people that have never learned to control those high levels of pressure. It feels like a volcano. The lava is building up, and the only thing that they know is just to burst out. So we can go into the psychology of that and say, usually a violent adult was an abused child in the past, and these are people that didn't get life skills, and these are people that didn't get a lot of empathy and love. We can say that, okay? But the bottom line is that these people at the moment because of the conditions, are extremely dangerous. Now, they don't have the resources to help them. So these are not people that we can say, okay, time out, you go to therapy now, okay? Or you go into some kind of environment that's going to help you, or we take the women and the children into a safe house right now. All of that doesn't exist anymore. In many countries, that's not an option. Even social services are completely overwhelmed, just dealing with, with the corona, and everything that brings to the table. So those cases of domestic violence and sexual abuse within the family kind of put aside, and we don't even hear it in the news. And the statistics, pre-corona were alarmingly high. So I don't even want to think about what's going on now, and it's kind of, nobody's talking about it because we're so busy, with this corona crisis, and for a good reason.
So the person who is the perpetrator, I believe most often it's male.
Yeah, and usually.
And that person would probably have some sort of a deep impulse control problem. Mm-hmm. That the triggers that set them off, they're unable to control or manage. And so they just go off and they abuse whoever is in their path.
Yes and no, because you know what, these men usually also work in a workplace, so they don't hit their colleagues and they don't hit their boss. There's also something there about looking at the wife, the spouse, or the children as individuals that are weakened and kind of like their fair game. So a lot of these men from the outside, we would never know, it would never cross our minds that these people are just beating their family members or raping their wives or molesting their children or God knows what, okay? They seem normal. Some of them, on a very high level of functioning. So there's something about control impulse, but there's also something about the belief system and something about the way they were brought up, the social conditioning around this. Mm-hmm. Because this is also, there's a wider context here, and that is the Me Too context. So also, let's remember that. This is not, there's a context here.
Well, they're just, if you look at the continuum, the line, that's kind of like the place where there's that crossing the line. There's that place of taking liberties or using someone in a way that's not respectful mm-hmm. or dignified. And then it goes farther and farther and farther to the point where this is really not a human being. I can treat you however I want. I can take whatever kind of liberties I want with you because you're really not, you're not on my level. You're not equal to me. And it's a kind of domestic terrorism in a sense, actually, because this person can perpetrate their terror on the children, on the wife, spouse, girlfriend, whoever, and they rarely have any recourse to do anything to be able to stand up for themselves, physically stand up for themselves, emotionally, and very often, as we've seen with the Me Too movement, people just don't believe the woman who comes forward and thinks that she has an agenda and an axe to grind or wants notoriety, but they really rarely believe them.
Yeah. And there's something here, there's an underlining issue here, which is the entitlement. These perpetrators walk around with a sense of entitlement. They are entitled to have human punching bags around them, and they are entitled to violate certain people's safety and boundaries and treat them in the way that no human deserves to be treated. And that needs to be named as well. And this is a situation. So the question now is, what do we do?
Yeah. What do we do and what can they do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big questions. Mm-hmm.
So there are a few levels here. I am not sure that in every situation there is something that we can do right now in order to save these women and children. And when I say that, that's, you know, I'm kind of conscious that I'm a little bit patronizing here, saving them, okay? Because you know what, at the end of the day, if someone doesn't want to be saved, they're not going to be saved, okay? And what we want, and we know this as coaches, okay? We want to invite someone to acknowledge the fact that they need help and then say, this is how I need the help, okay? And then we can engage. So as coaches, we're not in the business of saving anyone. So first of all, I want to talk to those individuals, and I'm going to talk to the women right now, okay? And then we're going to talk about this, you know, from a perspective of a community, of a society, and kind of, you know, reconnect to the first webinar that the podcast that we did together. So the first thing I want to say to these women is, you need to know that there is a probability that this will escalate, because we are not seeing the end of this right now. So you need to take a deep breath and start identifying the danger signals, okay? Because the shift might happen very quickly, okay? And between, you know, smacking someone and beating them to death. So if you have children, you need to step up as the mother of your children. Okay, if you cannot do this for yourself, and maybe you cannot do this for yourself for various reasons, there's no judgment here, and we're gonna say a few words about that in a bit. Okay, there's no judgment, because people that have never been in this situation have no idea what it means to be in a situation like that. Okay, so there's no judgment. However, this is an invitation for you to step outside of yourself and engage for the sake of your children, okay? Be the protector of your children, because they need you. Now let's talk about, you know, what it means to live under terror. And this is terror. You said that, and you're correct. This is living under terror. And what we need to understand, that a lot of these people, that the basic place that needs to be safe is not safe. It means that probably there is no home, there is no space that provides the safe, nurturing essence that the home needs to provide, because home is not home. Home is a war zone. These people exhibit post-traumatic stress disorder. These people basically exhibit the same emotional and mental symptoms that refugees that escape from war zones exhibit. And we need to know that. So we need to know that these are people that have either been conditioned to live in such a situation from a very young age. So they either grew up in homes with domestic violence, and this is the model that they have on how a family functions and how a relationship between a man and a woman functions. And within that, there is a belief system that basically believes that this is what I'm worth. So in terms of the core beliefs, you know, around the self, I am, life is, love is, men are, the world is. Well, those core beliefs, they are altered. And then there are a lot of beliefs about what I'm able to do. And we need to remember that our beliefs build our subjective reality. So if I believe that stepping outside the house is going to be extremely, extremely dangerous for me and the kids, and then you stand there and say, hey, yeah, but you need to go. It's okay. It's going to be okay. But I believe that that's the most dangerous thing I can do for myself and my kids. I'm not going to step out.
Personally, do you want to go to the hell you don't know, or stay with the hell you do know?
Usually you're going to stay with the hell you do know, because you have some coping skills there.
And it's also some factor of predictability. It's familiar. You've been with it a while, and you can anticipate to some degree what's going to happen. Whereas if you walk out that door, you may not be able to predict anything.
Mm-hmm. And predictability gives us a sense of control. Okay. And that's important. So the danger, I know, usually I will have a certain sense of control, kind of knowing how to navigate it. And sometimes that's an illusion. But subjectively speaking, it's going to be easier for us to be with what we know than be with what we don't know.
Yeah.
So first of all, no judgment towards these women. Because many times people say, yeah, but why didn't she say no? And why didn't she just up and leave? And why this and why that? If you haven't lived in a war zone, if you haven't been exposed to terror and violence every day, then don't judge, because you have no idea what that means. It alters your perception of reality. It alters your perception of yourself. It's a completely different state of mind and way of being. So what we are doing here is basically saying that at this moment, these women and children, most of all, need to be seen. We need to see them. We need to acknowledge that they're there. Okay? We know you're there. And we know that many times we will not know it's you, but we know that you're there, because you're not walking around with the scars all over your face. They're usually covered up with makeup or clothing or whatever. And now that we are all in quarantine, then I don't get to see you at all. But you know what? I know that you're there, because the statistics are terrible.
What are some of the statistics regarding this? I'm sure you're tuned into that.
Well, I am familiar about the statistics about sexual abuse. So we're talking about 1 in 2 women. And usually we know that most sexual abuse happens within the family. And, you know, the perpetrator is someone that the woman knows and trusts. The statistics among children that are being molested is 1 in 7, 1 in 6. Domestic abuse, I don't have the statistics, but I know they're high.
They're probably more clandestine and hidden from us, as in the secret that people don't want to know, because there's so much shame around it.
There is a lot of shame around it. And then, you know, a lot of women don't report. And when we're talking about domestic violence, we also need to understand that, you know, some of this violence is physical. Some of this violence is emotional. Nobody counts the emotional violence, you know, being totally controlled and humiliated and verbally abused and emotionally abused. Some of this is financial violence. Basically, you have no financial means, so you are enslaved financially to the person you're living with. Means you have no means of leaving home, okay? So these are different kinds of domestic violence. Usually the domestic violence that's reported is the physical one. Usually it's reported when a woman ends up in the hospital, because then the medical staff has an obligation of reporting it, or she finds herself in the middle of the night or the middle of the day, whatever, you know, packing up her suitcase and her children and running for her life, trying to find a safe house. Okay?
Yeah.
These are usually the cases that are reported. So the numbers are higher. The numbers are higher. But we really need to come together in an act of solidarity. And keep saying this out loud. We know that you are there, okay? Reach out if you need, in any way that you can, okay? Because calling the police right now, when the man is at home and saying, you know, I'm afraid, I'm in danger, that's not realistic. It's not going to happen, okay? So maybe the communication is going to be in code. I was sharing with you earlier this viral post that's, you know, going around in Israel, basically calling out for women that are in a situation of domestic abuse. If you need help, you know, contact me, send me, message me, and tell me that, ask me if I'm selling makeup, or, you know, and if you ask for an eyeliner, the code name is going to be eyeliner, and then I know to call the authorities. But if you just need me to support you emotionally, just, you know, call me or text me asking if I'm selling makeup. And there was a bit of backlash around that. So some people were saying, yeah, but, you know, women, why assume that all women need makeup? That's so chauvinist. And, you know, seriously, Okay, you're kind of missing the bigger picture here. Okay. And then there was backlash saying, yeah, but men are also on Facebook, so men are going to see these messages and they're going to know. And what do you think, men are stupid? Again, you're missing the point. You are missing the point. The point here is an act of solidarity. Yes, men have Facebook. Yes, men are smart. Yes, not all men are violent. Yes to everything. Yes, some women don't consume makeup. Not every woman needs makeup just because she's a woman. But there is something larger than that we're saying. What we're saying is we trust you to communicate in any way you can at the moment. And what we're going to do is we are going to remember that you're there. So if you communicate in code, then we are not going to dismiss that. So this is me kind of reaching out to coaches, therapists, counselors, anyone in a position that's working with someone. If you get a message in code that doesn't make sense, someone's approaching you on Messenger, okay? They need something and they're not really clear, don't dismiss it. Reach back, say, how can I contact you? Okay, there might be a subtext there, a cry for help. This might be someone that is going through some kind of abuse.
So use social media to your advantage in any way you can that's going to create safety for you and outreach to someone who could be a listening ear, who could be an advocate, who could help you in your situation. Not necessarily rescue, but somebody who could help you map out steps to be able to ensure the safety of you and your children.
For many people in this situation, for many women in this situation, just being acknowledged, someone just looking and say, I see you. I see what you're going through. That will give them the power to plant the first seed towards getting out of that situation. But if nobody sees you and you're totally transparent, how will you ever, stand up on your own 2 feet? The seed needs to be planted at some point, and we can help that. So listen out. If you hear shouting from an apartment, okay, just notice it. First of all, notice it. Don't block it out. Someone's shouting there, okay? If you pass a neighbor, I don't know, you're going down to throw the garbage, whatnot, if you're living in an apartment, you pass a neighbor, take a look. Look at that person, okay? Smile. Say good morning. Okay, see the response, okay? And we can smile with masks because we also smile with our eyes. It's okay. Okay, we can notice when someone's smiling at us, even if they have a mask. But let's take a genuine interest in our fellow human beings, okay? You can say, hey, how are you doing? If you need anything, I'm here. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you presented that option. You made yourself available. Yeah. And it's better to make yourself available to 100 people that way. And nobody's going to take the bait. Then for some person, you cross paths with, and they desperately need you to see that they're not okay. And you refuse to do that. You're not seeing them. And that was their only chance, taking out the garbage or whatever. That was the only chance for someone to see that they're in danger. I hope that makes sense, because it's a
starting point.
Yeah.
And then what can we say to the people who are in this pressure cooker, who feel like there's no way out and they're trapped? Because I keep hearing that word from people, I feel trapped. I feel like there's nowhere to go. I feel like I have no choices and no options. What can we say to them in terms of action steps?
Well, first of all, tap into your resources, into everything that you know already how to do, and try to stay as safe as you can, first of all. Then let's talk about those little signals that indicate that there is an escalation that might end up in a situation that none of us want to get there, meaning that someone is seriously injured or, God forbid, killed. You need to name those, because when that happens, you need to get out of there. And I seriously believe that for these women and children, the home environment is way more dangerous than the corona, at least short term.
Okay, so as I hear you, and I can identify with a lot of what you're saying from my own childhood, that if you find yourself in an at-risk situation, number one, you want to tell the truth to yourself.
Yeah, you have
Don't
to.
pretend that it's different than it is. Really acknowledge what's true and face it. Because oftentimes we will make excuses for that other person. They're under a lot of stress. They've just lost their job. Times are really tough. The finances aren't sorted out. They're not feeling well, whatever. But we as women will make excuses for that other person and their behavior, trying to normalize what's going on. And that's a trap. And we need to face the truth and tell the truth about situations that are dysfunctional, that are not healthy. And that's the first step, I believe, in the process.
I agree with you.
Okay.
And it's also, telling the truth to myself about my capabilities. Okay, because we also tend to say to ourselves, I've been through worse, I can handle it, it's okay, I'm stronger than this. No, you're not. Maybe not. Maybe this is it.
At times I call that the superwoman syndrome. It's like, I'll just put on my cape, I'll rise to the occasion, I can absorb this. I can absorb what's going on. I'm the one who holds the family together. I'm the nurturer, I'm the glue. It's up to me to make certain that everything is calm. And that is a bit of over responsibility as well.
And it's not realistic. It's not grounded in anything. Okay. And also this thing that we tend to say to ourselves, I'm going to absorb it, and by absorbing it, I'm going to be protecting my kids. So first you need to know that children that witness this kind of violence are traumatized, are scarred. Okay. This is teaching your little girls the role of a man and a woman, and this is also teaching your little boys the role of a man and a woman. Okay, so seriously, the fact that you are willing to absorb it, you're not really protecting your kids. Not really.
Okay, so action steps. After you tell yourself the truth and you face it and you acknowledge it without letting somebody else off the hook or without moving into the superhero syndrome, I believe what's important is to have a fire drill. Now, when we were kids, we had fire drills in school. And when we had fire drills in my school, you heard it, number one, because it was really loud. Yeah. And the action steps that they drilled into us were: put your books on your table, stand up in silence, walk out in ranks, and go out on the street and stand there until you get further orders or instructions. Now, those fire drills, we never had a fire in school. But those fire drills were so drilled into me that I can remember to this day exactly what I would do and exactly how I would march out of that room. They were very clear. It seems to me that anybody who is at risk for domestic violence / terrorism needs to have a fire drill in place.
Mm-hmm. I agree. In Israel, because of the political situation, we have like a siren drill. So this is where the siren goes off, and you know where to take refuge just in case you're being bombed. Same principle. How to get yourself to safety, and you need to practice that so it becomes automatic.
Okay.
It might be someone you call. It might be a place you go. Create that drill.
So maybe an action step would be to have a small bag packed. Always, and always ready to go at any moment, so that you can keep it someplace like under your bed or in the very top of your closet or somewhere that's not easily seen, but it's all set to go with all the essentials that you need in that bag. And then also to have a list of places that you could go if it started to escalate and get dangerous, so that you don't have to in that moment go, where do I go? Where do I go? Where do I turn? you have a list of places that are right there in the top of the bag. And you have the name, address, and phone number, email, whatever, to be able to say, we're there, it's dangerous, can we come now? And then get out.
And if you can't even manage to get a bag together, then don't. Okay, don't get stuck on that. Okay, there might be a situation where you can't hide a bag because that's going to be too obvious. Do what you can. Okay, you know your environment. You know the person. You know what's possible and what's not possible. This is an invitation, you know, to kind of stretch that little bit. But we also want to acknowledge that we are not there with you.
Right.
Okay, and you know how that danger looks and feels in your home. So create that drill, create those resources to the best of your possibility. And the invitation is also to start looking outside the box, because when you're living in terror, you go like this, you get a tunnel vision, okay? And there might be a resource here, you just don't see it, okay? So let's start, you know, asking what else is possible? What didn't I think about? Okay, a family member, a neighbor, a charity, a hotline, the police station, I don't know, okay? But you won't either until you start, okay, widening that tunnel vision and seeing what is possible.
And I think you want to be able to practice in a safe way with the kids, assuming that there are children in the household, so that you say something like, you know, we need to practice if something terrible happens. If we have a fire, if we have a robber, if we have an earthquake, if we have a terrorist attack, whatever you want to say, whatever's appropriate in your area, to be able to say, let's practice. Something happens, what are we going to do? Action steps. So that the kids get it into their mind as well, as opposed to mom saying, come on, kids, come on. Where are we going, mom? Come on, come on, come on. I don't understand. Where are we going? You really want to prepare them for the moment that you need to take action, and they have already been programmed to what you were going to say and do at that time.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, I think it's also a good idea to have some ideas about transportation. You may or may not have a car. You may or may not be on a bus line. It might be that there are services, whether it's a taxi or an Uber or some sort of transportation services that are available for you to contact. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it has to do with urgency and immediacy.
Yeah. Yeah. So start widening that perspective to see what you can use. It might not be perfect. You might need to make these combinations. And also know that living in such terror for how long that you have lived in such a terroristic environment, because domestic violence is terror, will change what you think about what you deserve and what's possible for you. So there's this internal dialogue, okay? And you might want to share that with someone else. So that person can give you some feedback. That person can give you another perspective. The worst thing that you can do is keep silent. And I know, we both know that speaking out is frightening, and it might be shameful, and you might feel guilty, and you might be afraid of, you know, being judged. But that's the way out. Someone needs to know. Yeah. So that when you need help, there's going to be someone there reaching out and saying, okay, take my hand. Someone needs to know.
So it's that outreach step, because I think, if I hear you correctly, that if we stay silent, if we keep it a secret, and we operate from that deep shame, it will never change.
It won't, regardless of the corona. It won't.
Yeah, the corona can exacerbate the situation, but the domestic terrorism is so much deeper than the corona but the corona definitely inflames it and triggers it, perhaps even out of control.
Mm. Yeah.
Maybe we should take a deep breath all together.
Yeah. My heart goes out, you know.
Yeah.
Just feels my heart goes out to my sisters.
So one of the
Uh,
things that I think we should emphasize before we complete our podcast today is don't emphasize what you can't do, but focus on what you
but you
can.
can. Yeah.
What's possible, not what you can't do. Because I think very often we say, but I can't this and I can't that and I couldn't and that wouldn't. All that's probably true. But let's start focusing on what you can and will execute to be able to take care of yourself and your kids.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about that is that once you take the first step, okay, what can I do? And you imagine yourself doing that, all of a sudden you realize what else you can do. And then you imagine yourself doing that. And I want to say something about the brain, okay, because our brain is amazing. And the most amazing thing about the brain is that it doesn't differentiate between reality and imagination.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, because if I imagine myself doing something, my brain's going to interpret that as an action done. So if I imagine myself creating that drill and I run it again and again and again in my mind, imagining myself doing it again and again and again and again, there's going to be a neurological path there, and I have a behavior and I have a habit. Okay?
And that's what worked.
Exactly. So you don't have to do it physically, okay? But do it in your mind, like really imagine yourself doing it. Imagine yourself picking up the phone. You know what? Imagine yourself living without this violence in your life. Just hold that space, okay? It might be like 5%. And once you're there, you're going to make it 6% and 7%. Okay? You're going to make that picture and that experience bigger and bigger and bigger until, you know, and every time you do that, your brain's going to check, I actually did that. Okay? Because our brain interprets that as an experience being experienced. And that's going to help you take that step.
I think it's also applicable for those of us who watch Netflix, movies, various different series. You know, we get very caught up in them. And we know they're actors. We know it's a script. We know it's a production. But the truth is, it hooks us. And it's a creative imagination of someone's that we get caught up in. So knowing that we can do that allows us the permission to be able to create our own neural pathways that will allow us to find the way out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
In summary, regardless of how desperate, pressure cookery your situation is, if you're living in a situation with domestic terrorism, there are steps that you can take. And fundamentally, you have to tell the truth to yourself. That's the first step. You can't make excuses for what's going on around you. You really have to tell yourself the truth. Then you have to be willing to go beyond the silence, the secrecy, and the shame of that situation, and be willing to reach out to another person. Because once you reach out to one other person, it starts to allow you to break that silence, which means when you break that seal of silence, all of a sudden you have given yourself the possibility of coming out of prison.
And that's the real prison, the silence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So making a list, creating a fire drill, creating safe places for yourself and your kids if you need to go there, practicing it. Ideally, if things get better and better and better, you don't have to execute it, but you have to have a plan to take care of yourself and your kids if things spiral out of control. And the situation that we're in right now could make that happen. And you need to take it seriously. So I want to thank you, Shiri, for being on my podcast again, because you are such a blessing. Every time you show up with your words of wisdom, I know our listeners and our viewers will benefit from your heartfelt words to their hearts as well. So thank you for being such a wonderful
My pleasure.
human, caring, loving uh, coach, trainer, and friend. Truly.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you for doing this with me.
It's my pleasure. So, you want to join us again on Dr. Cherie's podcast? I
Of
hope
course.
that I hope to have Shiri on again, and I'll have other guests as well. I'm so in love with her and our energy right now that I'm a little stuck, but that's a positive stuckness. But in the future, please remember to tune in, share it with your friends, let people know what we're talking about. That's the way to get the word out. So we're not asking you for anything in return, except if you like what we're saying, and you like what we're doing, share it with those you know and share it with those you love. You can see behind Shiri, there is the MCI logo that stands for Medical Coaching International, right?
Medical Coaching Institute.
Institute, Medical Coaching Institute. And she is on Facebook and she is everywhere and she is in multiple languages and she's brilliant. So join us again. Again, thanks for joining us and be safe, be vigilant, be careful, and be kind.
Yes.
Dr. Cherie signing off today. Thank you.